Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange will be able to appeal an extradition to the U.S., where he faces life in prison on 17 espionage charges for publishing classified U.S. government documents that in part expose potential war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. Two high court judges today ruled Assange has grounds to challenge Britain's extradition order. Assange's wife Stella spoke outside the court to his supporters who rallied.
We went into court and we sat and heard the United States fumbling through their arguments, trying to paint lipstick on a pig. Well, the judges were not convinced. Everyone can see what's going on here. The United States case is offensive. It offends our democratic principles. It offends our right to know. It is an attack on journalists everywhere.
She called on the Biden administration to drop its case against Assange, detailed the impact its prosecution has had on their children, and called for reparations. The ruling sets the stage for an appeal process likely to further drag out a years-long legal saga. Assange has spent the last 5 years in a British high-security prison after taking refuge in Ecuadorian embassy in London for 7 years. The International Criminal Court's top prosecutor is issuing arrest warrants for top Israeli and Hamas leaders. That includes Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant over its war in Gaza. Karim Khan made the announcement today.
The crimes include starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, willfully causing great suffering, serious injury to body or health or cruel treatment, willful killing or murder, and intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population, as well as crimes against humanity of extermination and or murder, persecution, and allegations of crimes of committing other inhumane acts. Unfortunately, these crimes continue to this day. My office submits that these individuals, through a common plan, have systematically deprived the civilian population of Gaza of objects indispensable to human survival.
The office has faced pressure and threats from U.S. Republican lawmakers against prosecuting Israeli leaders. Khan today stressed the principles of international law require it be applied equally. Arrest warrants also include 3 top Hamas officials for its October 7th attack in southern Israel: Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Daif, and Ismail Haniyeh for war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Gaza Strip and Israel over its October 7th attack.
Extermination as a crime against humanity. Murder as a crime against humanity and as a war crime. The taking of hostages as a war crime. Rape and other acts of sexual violence during captivity as crimes against humanity and as war crimes. Torture during captivity as a crime against humanity and as a war crime. Other inhumane acts during captivity as a crime against humanity, cruel treatment during captivity as a war crime, and outrages upon personal dignity during captivity as a war crime.
Khan says Israel has a right to defend itself against the October 7th attack, but doesn't have the right to flout humanitarian law. It's up to the International Criminal Court judges to approve or deny the arrest warrants. Ben Smotrich, Israel's Minister of Finance, compared the warrants to Nazi propaganda. Benny Gantz called it a crime of historic proportions. He threatened to leave the government if Prime Minister Netanyahu doesn't come up with a plan for after the war in Gaza ends over this past weekend. Donald Trump's defense lawyers continue cross-examination of former lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen, whose testimony has tied Trump to an alleged election hush money scheme. Trump faces 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to a payment to an adult film star who alleges they had a sexual encounter that was during his 2016 presidential campaign. The Republican denies the encounter and said today say there's been no crime. Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi, the country's foreign minister, and others have been found dead at the site of a helicopter crash after an hours-long search. Today, there were no survivors. Former Pacifica National Affairs correspondent and longtime KPFA program host Larry Bensky died this weekend at the age of 87. Bensky was a signature voice for Pacifica radio broadcasts for decades. He won the George Polk Award for his weeks-long live broadcast of the congressional Iran-Contra hearings in 1987, and he anchored Pacifica's coverage of congressional hearings, Supreme Court hearings, and Democratic and Republican national conventions. Bensky wrote, contributed, and edited for the Paris Review, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, The Nation magazine, and other media outlets. He was also a professor of journalism at local colleges and universities. And he was a political activist since the 1960s, working with nuclear disarmament and anti-war groups in New York City, Paris, and San Francisco during the Vietnam War. He was a devout pacifist and an outspoken opponent of capital punishment. Larry Bensky, dead at the age of 87. I'm Christina Onnested, reporting for Pacifica Radio.